Thank you so much for coming out today, guys. The subject of today's workshop is going to be how to manage tilt. Now, what is tilt? Can anyone tell me? I mean, you're here, so you must know what it is. So the general definition that we're going to be working with is it's an emotional breakdown resulting from frustration. It's an emotional state where you're kind of doing the exact same thing over and over, but it's resulting in a negative outcome. This is triggered generally by your brain perceiving a threat. So in this case, in Gwent, it would be, oh my God, I'm losing MMR. Ah, and your brain doesn't know how to deal with that threat because, it's video games. So it results in this emotional response malfunction that sort of impedes your brain's rational ability to make decisions correctly.
It impairs decision making.
Yeah,
That's the most important thing. It makes you play
right.
worse Gwent, and you do not get the result you want.
Exactly. And Lock-In did a really great video on it. I'm going to put it in Voice Chat Companion, where he goes into detail on tilt and how it affects, or rather, what happens in your brain that causes it. I'm not going to try to repeat it because it's a little detailed, but you can watch it if you want to. It's really interesting. So we're going to cover today, uh, obviously, the definition, how to recognize tilt in yourself, how to reset your frame of mind after being tilted, and then how to avoid tilt in the first place by setting yourself up for success. And then we'll have open discussion and Q&A at the end. Sound good? Cool.
Resounding
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. Okay. So,
Dank.
what does tilt usually feel like? Um, my general rule is if I have to ask myself if I'm tilted, I'm probably tilted. Um, Situations that would normally tilt me would be like losing by 1 point to like a matchup that I consider like really degenerate, like like Viper Witchers or something against something I feel like I shouldn't have lost against. Um,
Hand buff.
hand buff, yeah. So what
Cue easy
normally
habit.
can you guys give me some examples of stuff that normally gets under your skin with the game or like puts you in a bad mood? I don't know.
I
What
just
get
said,
what gets you guys?
The great swords with the 20-point Jenga.
Yep.
That was
Alchemy
like
Nilf
the
card
power
yet
ups.
again.
Yeah.
And reveal.
Mhm.
And reveal. I'm like,
Reveal. Okay. I think something that can really help is if you ask yourself, why? Why do you feel so strongly about these certain matchups? And is it reasonable to feel this way? So that might be something to reflect on. So, once you're tilted and you recognize that, how can you kind of clear your mind? So, my first suggestion, and RG is, oh, right, RG's here. RG's my co-pilot today. I should have mentioned that right at the beginning. Um, Sorry, I haven't done
No
one of these
problem.
workshops in a while. Um,
I'm
and
just here to lend some support and
yes,
to say some things,
say words.
to say words at times. Yes.
Yeah. So how can we reset our state of mind? First suggestion, play something else. Games are meant to be fun. If you're not having fun, if you're upset, play something else. Uh, Pull up like a different game that's low pressure or play with some friends. Just play something else for a while. My general rule is if I've lost 2 games in a row, on the third game, I tell myself if I lose a third, I'm taking a break and then play something else. You could also, this is a suggestion from Lock-In's video, you can put the negative energy into something constructive. Do some chores, work out. In fact, working out is also really good for pumping blood to your brain. Like just do some jumping jacks and it can, it
Absolutely.
it makes your brain function better. You can also try some meditation and breathing exercises, some deep breathing. I think RG has more experience with that than I do, he said.
A little bit.
A little bit?
I like sometimes before gaming sessions to just kind of do some deep breathing. You know, slow, deep breaths in and out. It helps kind of focus the mind and make you present in the moment, so you can actually focus on the game and not just like play on autopilot or kind of you know
Yeah, you
be
really
all over
want to
the place.
avoid that autopilot mind state.
Yeah.
Like if you find yourself saying, "Oh, I just gotta keep playing until I get a win," don't do it. It's a trap. Don't.
It
yeah,
just
don't
makes it
fall
feel
into
worse.
the
And this is all super applicable to other games as well, not just Gwent, of course, like any competitive game.
Absolutely.
And then I also had noted, like, if you have temper issues that result in tilts, general anger management techniques may be something to look into. I do not have any presently for this. I was going to look into it, but ran out of time this week. Um, Definitely something you could look into as well for that.
I will say this on the state of the mind thing also. I think generally leading a healthy lifestyle, exercising, going to bed on time, which I do not do, shame on me, and eating regularly and healthy meals will in fact improve your mental performance. There's some very excellent tournament articles written in the Magic community about this, where you're supposed to exercise, you're supposed to just be healthy as a person, and then when you go into a couple hour long gaming session, you're actually able to focus. You don't go into autopilot. You don't get mentally exhausted, and then consequently play worse. And until if you're able to maintain that focus
Yeah,
for a long period
because
of
you
time.
have to keep your brain healthy and fuel your brain, and that comes from having a healthy body, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle. And that leads really nicely into the last and largest section, um, is how do you avoid tilt by setting yourself up for success? And one of those is uh, everything RG mentioned. So I had noted here, like, play at times of the day when your brain is most alert. Did you eat protein today? Protein is brain food. Are you hydrated? Did you sleep well? Because whenever I have a bad night's sleep, I just kind of avoid playing ranked in any of the games that I play. I'm like, nah, my brain's not awake enough for this, and I just don't do it.
Yep.
Um, Make good decisions that can help prevent tilt triggering situations, and that also comes from uh, playing like when you're alert and when you're having a good day. I love to play personally when I'm in a really good mood. I have very good success at ranked games when I'm just like, oh, I had a great day. Come home and I'm like, you know what? I want to play some ranked. And then I also like to stop when I'm ahead. That was something my mom always said too. Quit while you're still having fun. I'll play and I'll be climbing and then I'll be like, okay, this is a new high for the season. I'm gonna stop there. Stop on a win. Stop when you're still feeling good. Avoid marathon sessions. Definitely take breaks. It helps your focus. Um, and then yeah, play when you're feeling good was next on the list. I have these notes as well that I'll post afterwards for you guys. Actually, I can just post them now. The formatting will probably break on Discord, but you can look at them. Yeah, it broke, but they're there. Um, I'll post it on a Word document on Google to go with the
Yeah.
video when I upload the video. Play in low pressure situations if you can. That can help your brain avoid feeling like there's a threat. Um, so I personally like to set daily or weekly goals for myself when I climb in Gwent. So I'll tell myself, oh, I'll start at the beginning of the season and make one rank a day until I reach kind of the highest area, and then I'll shoot for kind of smaller goals on a daily basis, and then stop when I reach them. And it kind of helps prevent burnout, which is also something that can lead to tilt. And that way you're not just, feeling like you need to grind out 8 ranks in one day at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
important to pace yourself. I would say it's very
yeah,
easy to burn out in Gwent, especially I feel because you can just jam like 100 games in one day. Not that anyone is crazy enough to do that. No, never. Who would ever do that? Not me, certainly. But like it is very easy to kind of end up in a situation where you literally just get sick of the game, and if you're in that mood, playing more only makes it worse. So yeah, I really strongly agree with the idea of kind of pacing yourself and setting clear goals, and not like long like reach goals, but just be like, hey, I will play this many games today, and I will do my best in those games. I think is better than saying I need to get X rank by this time, otherwise I'm a failure as a person or something like that. I mean that's exaggerated, but you get the point. Yeah.
yeah. Long-term tilt management techniques are we're going to actually talk into next, so that leads into that nicely. RG was
Absolutely.
going to talk about long-term mindset for climbing, and that'll also help you avoid being tilted.
So yeah, so this is a blurb I tell my mentees a lot. Well, at least some of them. Um, I have been playing competitive card games for years at this point, and card games notoriously, even more so than like other games, have a very, very high element of RNG in them. So this makes the games, well, frustrating sometimes. You know, you have a 1 in 4 chance to lose the game, and then you hit it with your Vilgeforce. Feels really bad, you know, you hit your one brick in your deck, or you queue and then you run into Sabbath, and your deck is really bad against Sabbath. But like Sabbath is like maybe 2% or 5% of the decks on the ladder, less than that probably, and you just happen to run into 2 Sabbaths in a row. So it's very easy, I think, to get tilted in card games if what you care about is like winning every single game. I want to talk about a concept called results oriented thinking and how to avoid it. So basically, the idea is when you're playing the game, I think the goal. So this is going to sound counterintuitive. I think for me, the goal is not to win the specific game I'm playing, but actually to just make as few mistakes as possible. And this does one of two things. One, it focuses kind of on factors you have control over, such as your own decisions. And two, it puts a lot of pressure off you to do something that might quite literally be impossible because you didn't get the correct draws, or your deck doesn't have the answers, or whatever, you know, or you just have no goals in hand. You know, it's very easy to be like, oh, I can't believe I lost that game. But I think if you reframe it as um, I did the best I could do with the cards I had. The key thing I do when I go into the games, when I go into a session of playing Gwent, is I don't actually ever set a goal to win a certain number of games or get to a certain point. I certainly have goals, right? Long-term goals for where I want to finish the season, or you know, in this case, I'm trying to climb to top 100, top 50 in the pro ladder for the challenger qualifiers. But for each individual game, my goal is not to win. It's to improve, get better, and make as few mistakes as possible, and to learn if I do make a mistake, and to remember and to reflect and to work on that. So by focusing on the things I have control over, such as my own decisions, I I can kind of, I don't want to say ignore, but mitigate a lot of the tilting factors. So rather than like going into the Sabbath matchup and just being like, well, this is awful, I'm going to lose, and then dreading the loss, I'm just like, oh, okay, so I'm going to lose this game. But Sabbath is like 5% or less of the field. I'm not going to queue into that many Sabbath decks. And if I do, you know, bad luck, whatever. The key is I'm doing all the things I can do to win. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So yeah, I think it's really about just reframing your goals, and kind of being in the mentality of I want to improve, as opposed to I want to win literally every game.
Yeah, and you never want to
Uh,
be blaming the other person. Don't fall into
yes.
the trap of like that blaming mindset, like, oh, well, they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that win. I deserved that win. That was a matchup in my favor. I should have won that. Uh, you know.
That is the nature of card games, right? You're gonna have bad luck. You're gonna have bad matchups. The key is over time to perform well, so you increase your win rates over 100 games or 1,000 games. Um, and by focusing on the stuff you have control over, you will see results in the long term. You will see results in the weeks, in the months, in the couple months or years even, as you keep on playing, I would say. But yeah, that's
Absolutely.
that's like the goal, right? The goal is eventually to be a better player, to be the best player you can be.
To get good.
It's yes. So and to do that, you have to ignore distractors, the short-term distractors like RNG and luck, or stuff you have no control over.
I agree. Now, this workshop is not going to be as long as our faction archetype workshops, just by the nature of it. So, I wanted to open it up to discussion and Q&A. So if there are any sections that we covered that you guys wanted to dig deeper into, or if you have specific questions or scenarios that you wanted to visit, this would be the time to talk about it. And you can also type to us in the voice chat companion channel as well.
Yeah.
If you
I think it'd be
prefer
cool
not
to
to use your
kind of
mic.
it'd be cool to use this time to kind of work through maybe some mental blocks people have, or any questions or stuff about tilt in general, or personal issues with tilt.
Yeah.
My issue with tilt is sometimes I don't know when to stop, such as like let's say I lose like 3 games and I think, okay, I lost 3 games, maybe if I push for more it'll be different, but no, and then I end up getting a losing streak instead, and then I end up tilting.
That is exactly what I think I mentioned earlier about don't fall into the trap of saying, oh well, I just need to play until I win one, or maybe if I just keep playing, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
So
it's so
maybe,
easy to fall
yeah.
into,
I
especially when
know. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it's so easy to fall into, especially when it's just like, hey, I want to meet the smaller goals, such as like even like when you log in, play 6 rounds,
Yeah, yeah. It
Um,
really is. I there's no real cure for that besides just reminding yourself that the small goals don't really matter, I guess, as much, and just being willing
like I
to
can
move
come
on.
back to it later.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Just recognizing that that is going to be probably not worth the grind in the short term. Yeah.
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 With him, and I don't think he knows what it is.
What?
Hmm?
Well, I didn't hear. Akame, what did you say? Okay, seems like we're having some mic issues here. It's all right. Plasma Pug says how to deal with tilt on long gaming hours. I usually stream Gwent at least 4 hours at a time. I
can help.
don't have a lot of experience with that, so
I can chime
yeah.
in a little bit there. So yesterday I had like a 8 to okay, it was like a 10-hour session
Oh no.
of pro ladder. Yeah, it's not something I recommend. Like, I don't think that's a thing you should necessarily do. But I'm low on time, so when I have time, I use it. That's kind of how I play in huge bursts. Um, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do for all the tilt stuff. I know, but what I do in the long sessions is I make a point to take regular breaks. I think 30 minutes is good, but I sometimes do like hour and a half.
Well, he
But
mentioned it's
I
during
just literally
streaming, so he
oh,
could.
you could do that too. So you can just walk away for like 5 minutes, play
Yeah.
some music, do something like that.
Yeah, I'll use Ocean Mud as an example. I love Ocean
Yeah.
Mud's stream, and whenever he had a bad game, he'll actually stop and play a couple rounds of Minesweeper, and it's to the point where like his chat loves
Yep.
watching him play Minesweeper, and they're like, "Yeah, Minesweeper," and he'll just kind
But
of use that to reset a
it's
little
super
bit.
important to take breaks during the long sessions, especially. Even as simple as walking to your kitchen and getting a glass of water, refilling your water, I think can help your mind reset a little bit. The key again is I think just avoiding the autopilot situation,
Hmm.
because that's a downward spiral that only gets worse.
I will
So
like
you
get
just
up while I'm queued and like walk
mhm.
around the room and do some jumping jacks sometimes. I know it sounds dumb, but it like actually
Yeah,
it
it works.
literally pumps blood. It like gets your blood flowing,
Yeah.
and that wakes up your brain a little bit, and it kind of can help to kind of clear the haze, like that
anything that
fog.
breaks anything that breaks the routine, anything that wakes your mind up so it can't fall into that state is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like to not immediately requeue. I like to reflect on key decision points like optimal passing, placement, that type of stuff, so that even when in those losses, there's always something you can do better. Even just the small stuff, things you may not immediately remember, but all those little things can often pile up. So if you really care, just pause, don't immediately requeue, maybe take a note, say that actually on turn 3 I placed this unit in the front row, and that prevented me from doing this 6 turns later. which actually lost me the game. It all ties together, and it's hard to tie that back together because that might be like many minutes apart, but it the note taking I've found to be really helpful too.
Yeah, I do
I
that too.
strongly agree there. Yeah. This is kind of bordering onto a different topic, but I actually recommend people to, if if you hit a wall and you don't know why you're losing and that's frustrating, one thing you can do is just record your games. Personal, you don't have to like post it on YouTube or anything, but just record your games, and then later when you are in a different, fresh mindset, go back and watch the games and see how you played, and see what mistakes you made. With the video, you can have you don't have to rely on your memory, and you can really see what happened in the game.
Yeah,
And you
that's
Yeah.
can
even
notice
better.
a lot. You can notice a
Sometimes,
lot.
yeah, sometimes when I do that, I'm like, holy crap, like what kind of brain dead potato decision making was I on, you
Right,
know?
right,
It's like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tereg says, I just wanted to bring up a good book resource that helps me a lot in terms of mindfulness and management with card games in general, even though it's a poker book. I would highly recommend Tommy Angelo's book, The Elements of Poker. There's a lot of crossover concepts from what's being discussed here, and I think, uh, yeah, about what the book talks about.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's interesting because one of the first big streamers in Gwent was Life Coach, who came from Hearthstone, but originally he was a pro poker player.
Hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of crossover between competitive card
I
games.
have plenty of
Just,
magic articles and
yeah,
podcasts that I could link also.
yeah,
Yeah, dealing with this very subject. It is a universal thing, I think, and it's
Hmm.
especially pronounced in card games because of the RNG factor.
Yeah, and in poker, you often see a lot of these things. The books like you're mentioning, uh, it everybody's trying to get that edge, and it's not MMR that's on the line; it's your money, right? So people care even more to
Oh
get
yeah.
any fraction of a percent of it. And like Life Coach, I think he was saying he had 60% edge at the end of the height of his career. So like getting up to those ranks and being able to push yourself, reflect every decision, and it's much more granular in a game like that too. So there's so much more to think about. And in Gwent, it's actually much more
Yeah.
defined. There not quite as many decisions. So if you can isolate those really key ones that ended up having a huge impact, you can definitely learn from that. And like you're saying, it's all about the process. If you make a mistake, just learn from it. It's okay. It's okay to fail.
yeah. I like to make mental notes. I'll say, okay, mental note. Don't play X card in Y matchup at Z time for future reference. I just tell myself that, and then I usually remember it the next time that I like run into that matchup. I think, oh, last time this happened, so I'm gonna watch for that, and that
Lot
definitely
of
helps avoid.
algebraic formula
Yeah,
in
and it's
Angie's
just
notes.
well.
Bait the alchemy witchers.
I think there's a lot of crossover between avoiding tilt and learning to climb effectively. That's kind of what we're getting into here is like smart climbing techniques and learning techniques because that's part of like setting yourself up for success to not get tilted while you play.
Yep. Oh, there's something I wanted to mention
Ammers
about.
is Gwent AI confirmed. Yeah. No, that's Argy
Yeah.
with the
I,
quick maths.
I, uh, I want to say one note also is so poker players, Magic players, I'm sure Yu-Gi-Oh players as well, though I'm not familiar with the community, and Gwent players. If you can even get 60% win rate in a matchup, that's really, really, really good,
It is.
especially at the top level. But what does that mean? That means the best players in the world playing against the other best players in the world are at like they're losing 40% of their games sometimes, right? Depending on the matchup, on ladder, I mean, right? Because you don't know what you're going to queue into. So even if you're like a god at the game, you're literally losing 40% of the games. Every 10 games you play, you win 6 and you lose 4.
Mhm.
So realizing that even the best players are still losing a decent quantity of games. Okay, I mean, like every now and then you get on a lucky streak where you just like win everything, but realistically, over time, your average is gonna be somewhere like in the 60%. If you're good, if you're like really, really, really good at the game, it's gonna be in the 60%. And those players are still losing games. So
So what hope do the rest of us have?
there's no reason to be hard on yourself for losing a game. There's literally no reason to be hard on yourself because you will lose games. Everyone loses games. It's just
I
it
say
really
that
is
all the
about
time.
mentality.
In
Yeah.
Overwatch, I'll just be like, well, can't win them all.
Yeah,
Or
it
even
really is
when
not
I'm on
about.
a win streak, I'll literally say out loud, like when I'm playing in a group, I'll be like, "Oh, well, we were on a win streak. We were about due for a loss." Like,
Yeah, it's just important to realize that the sheer volume of games that you will lose in your current life, that's just the fact of the game, and it's important to accept that, I think, and move on from that.
Yeah, and another thing, a lot of people tend to reflect on losses, but I feel like the wins sometimes can be interesting reflection points too. Realizing what decision ended up panning out really well,
Mhm.
or you maybe won in spite of improper decisions earlier. Just because you won the game doesn't mean you made the right decision. That, over 100 games, that's going to lose you more than you win. So it's important
Yes.
to realize well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key point I've just been hammering today is to decouple your performance and your skills from the result of the game. And even winning doesn't mean you necessarily played correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes
yeah,
the
in
winning move is
fact,
actually the wrong move. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Tarek
Or I
says,
just win by dumb luck sometimes.
Yeah.
Because someone else they misplayed
Yeah.
before the
That's
last
okay.
round.
That's okay. You
you
can
always
enjoy
you
it and
always got to
celebrate
give
it.
them a chance to lose the game
Yeah.
before you.
Hey,
Never
if you're
forfeit. Give them a chance to lose.
if you're a bad player like me, what you always want to aim to do is just go to a top deck war room free, and then you'll win like 50% of the time. It's good. You'll climb.
We have
You
a
don't win by
comment.
making good moves. You win by making less bad moves than the opponent.
Yes. Oh, we have a
Just-
comment in text chat from Tarek. It says, something I'd like to hear more discussion about are more nuanced versions of tilt. Being aware of, quote, micro tilt is also useful. Understanding that tilt sometimes can manifest itself in not so obvious ways. When I say micro tilt, I mean your emotions might largely be under control, but even minor things can cause you to make poor decisions. You'd
yes.
like to hear more discussion on micro tilt?
So, do you have some examples of this that you've experienced, maybe, or you've read about?
So this is Treg, by the way.
Mhm.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm mainly talking about this concept primarily from the poker world. Like I hear that term a lot, so I'm speaking from experience mainly from poker. But it's very detailed and very granular in nature, I think. And so like there is a bit of nuance to this, and it like I said, it can be not so obvious, but mainly like we've largely been talking about the sort of emotional reactions to things and how tilt comes from those sorts of things. But I think let me in terms of like specific examples, probably if I can maybe translate it to something Gwent related, like I would say thinking about like move to move and sequencing and primarily something distracting you or some aspect of the game that doesn't anger you necessarily, but distracts you in a way that prevents you from making the best decision. So
Do you mean like that moment that we've all had where we line up the perfect 25-point Gigny and then we just pass or turn outwards without even thinking about it?
Yeah,
We've
something
all
like
been there.
yeah, you play a unit and then you suddenly realize that it's Gigny, like that you've lined up like a super major Gigny, and like maybe it doesn't bother you so much because you're like, oh, I hope they don't have Gigny in this situation, but like the very next move that you make is because it was immediately preceded by like a move that you've made that like it kind of sets you back a little bit, and you don't have time to necessarily reframe your mindset to make the next best play, and then you end up making a suboptimal play as a result of that. Like you may not be like super, you may or may not be like super overly emotional about something like that, but like little things that take you off of your most optimal play that can affect your decision making over time.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Even something as anything can be a distraction, I think, if you're in a hyper focused state, and can get you out of the state where you need to be to perform at your best, right? And it's the idea of recognizing that and mitigating it as much as possible.
Could I bring up some? That actually just reminds me of two things. So, first of all, playing against Ice Triple Scorch and decks of that nature, and second of all, playing.
Oh, my favorite deck.
Yeah. So when you're like, that's almost in itself kind of a form of tunnel vision, which leads to unproductive, style of play and an unproductive mentality. Because if all like your opponent is trying to line up a Scorch, and if by minimizing the Scorch that they get, you're actually playing suboptimally, it very well if you may very well win the game. Because generally speaking, Ithne has a low point per card average in round 3, but because they're relying on the Scorch or whatever. But even though you feel like, it's kind of what you're saying about the results oriented mentality, even though you might win the game, like I just remember a game 3 days ago when I was playing this Ceres Olaf. It's like a silly deck on ranked, just to kind of to chill out or whatever. And I know the guy was trying to line up this like Igni with all my 11-point bears, and I was making all these really I was kind of in a silly mood, so I was doing silly stuff anyway. But I was making all these really stupid plays just to play around the Igni, and then it turned out he didn't have Igni at all, and he was just messing with me. I thought I was just like laughing to myself.
It's sometimes correct to still play around it if you can afford to. The key is realizing when you can't afford to, and then knowing you have to play into it and just hope he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I suppose my point was just tunnel vision, though. It's just that can be built definitely because you try and set up this perfect plan, and then all of a sudden they have hard counter you, and then that just like triggers this massive tilt thing in your head. You're just like, oh my god, I thought I'd done this perfectly, and da 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 da. Anyways, yeah, that's my point.
Isha in chat says there's some really easy mind tricks that you can use to cheat yourself into a positive mindset. You can make a sticky note and pin it to your screen, write something on it like take a break or are you tilting again? This works well with a selfie. Take it while you're making a really angry face and pin it. Either you can laugh at yourself and think, whoa, that's me. I'm not pretty when I'm angry. I like that. That's cute.
Yeah,
it's true.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
One of my I have to look at the exact quote, but one that I think of often when I play competitive games is actually from Star Trek Next Gen. Picard says, it's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That's not verbatim, but it's something very similar to that. So,
I'm trying to remember. I think I know the episode you're talking about.
Let me find the exact quote. I think that's pretty close.
Oh, I finished Deep Space Nine, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Hey, we're in the middle of a workshop here.
Sorry.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Well, we can have a workshop on Star Trek.
It's good, but...
How does Star Trek apply to Gwent?
The line is correct, by the way.
Cool.
Is it really?
Yeah. Season 2, episode 21.
Nice. Let's see, what else from chat here? Anivia says he has the strangest way of dealing with tilt. Just tell myself I'm a failure and my dad was right. Good idea.
Wow.
No, don't do that.
It's important to
remain positive. Like, don't listen to Anivia.
Don't listen to Anivia. He's
That's
a bad,
just good advice in general,
mod.
to be
He's
fair, like
mod.
in life. So, no, yeah, it is very important to maintain a positive mindset. I think everything becomes harder if you don't believe that you yourself can do it. I think this kind of circling back to the micro tilt and to Spenny's point. I think if you go into a matchup thinking you're already going to lose because it's unfavored, you end up actually causing yourself to play a lot worse.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. So there was this time yesterday actually I played against Sabbath like 4 times. Kill me now. but I lost 3 of those games. But the game I won, what happened was he dropped his Sabbath, and then he basically had the lockdown. He dropped Sabbath. Sabbath was on 12 or something. There was nothing in my. I was playing Great Swords. Nothing in my deck that can actually dual Sabbath. But what I did was I played Herald, and oh, he also had a unit next. I played my spy next to his Sabbath, and then I used Herald's Goal to bring the spy to be equal to the Sabbath, so both were on 12. But it's only 24 points, so I'm running Igni. So I waited. I played like 5 more cards until he finally passed, and then I resurrected Herald from my graveyard, and then putting the skull back in, so it's 25 points, and then I was able to Igni the Sabbath, and it was ridiculous, right? That's like a 5%
Jesus
point.
Christ.
I'm not sure if I'm kind of a little bit rambling at this point, but like essentially I made like this 5% outs that should not have ever happened if my opponent was aware or paying attention to it. But like it's very easy going into round 2, having lost round 1, to just be like, okay, I lost this game. There's no way I can win at this point, and then to forfeit. But I was like, well, maybe there's a chance, and it worked out. You know, it worked out that time. It probably did not work out the next 20 times I try that, but it's very possible to get these like ridiculous minuscule edges, and sometimes it works out in your favor. You know, if you just don't go into the game thinking you've already lost. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. Playing to your outs is huge.
Tarek has another good point in voice or in text chat. I'm going to paraphrase, but it's talking about accountability while playing via having someone watching, like through co-op or streaming, because it puts you in a mental state because you know you're being watched and you tend not to get as angry or upset. And I can personally attest to that. I used to stream Hearthstone when I was climbing to Legend, and I never played as well as I did than when I was streaming, because when you're being watched, you're more alert, you're more engaged, you tend to pay more attention to what you're doing because you don't want to make mistakes in front of people. So that might be a good technique for some to avoid tilting, is to have a second eye.
I kind of feel like I feel like King Chaz is the only streamer, to my knowledge, who plays exceptionally well while streaming. But I feel like, in generally speaking, most people would say they play worse.
Absolutely, undeniably for me.
To each their own. Yeah, I'm just saying it might be a good option for some, and maybe not for others. You just kind of find what works for you.
That's the reason I'm not really streaming right now.
As well, I think the trick is balancing chat interaction with focusing and finding a good balance there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I'm tilted.
Literally, presently, right now.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, what happened?
I'm queued into.
You queued into what?
Hand buff.
Hand buff.
We were just talking about this. It's a bad matchup, but you always want to play to your outs to get that edge. And if you lose, it's okay. Yes.
You can't win them all. It's okay.
Yeah, don't lose before you enter the game. Don't lose before you play your first card. That's important.
You know what's another really, really good tip is you just rope them every turn if you know that you're not going to win.
The Naj neither condones nor denies this tactic, I think.
No comment.
and those emote spam. Don't forget the emote spam. It's very important.
Oh, yes.
Whenever I see the Odrin avatar, I immediately mute it because I know that the emotes from the avatar tilt me faster than anything else in the game. The Odrin avatar, the drunk,
yeah.
Oh, I always auto squelch whenever I see that avatar. So I'm just like, I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it. It upsets me.
If the emotes tilt you, you can just auto mute at the start of the game every game. That's not a bad thing to do. If you know you get tilted by that, just go for it. My plan is so I give them one emote. They're allowed one. I value your service, or you would make a good slave.
You would make a good slave.
That's fine. That's fine.
Oh god.
But if they spam it like 2 more times, I just mute them because I don't want that's just a distraction basically to the game at that point. That is literally a distraction.
But you can't talk to people in this game, so that's how people do.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm okay with like one emote, but like more than that, I just mute. So that's my policy. You can adjust your policy depending on how much you are affected by it or not affected by it. But yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that you if you're okay with it, you should go for it. But if you know it tilts you, don't set yourself up for failure. Just mute.
When I know I'm losing games, but I'm not mad about it. This is like, I guess, the anti-tilt or whatever. I don't know how to call it. Yeah, well, if I know I'm losing a game, I usually tell the well done emote, depending on like who it is.
Yeah, I have no problem with emotes in general. It just gets it just when it gets to the point where it's distracting me is when I mute usually. I emote sometimes too. I mean, it's fun.
I avoid it. The only time I emote is when I make a mistake. And then I say bad play, and then Yennefer says, a novice mistake, but I'm talking about myself.
I never emote if I'm winning, because I know that comes off as kind of BM sometimes. So
yeah,
but yeah.
Well, were there any other questions you guys had, or anything you wanted to dig a little bit deeper into? So we have been going for about 45 minutes, and
yeah, how do you beat Handbuff?
This isn't. Now listen here. This isn't a coaching session. This is a workshop about managing tilts. Stay on topic.
Sorry.
Listen here, you.
That's like asking how to counter Sabbath when you have no counter. You just forfeit the match, obviously.
Sounds like we have a coaching request here. We can take care of that later.
Did you know the lodge offers mentoring?
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it does. If you just make your way down to the request a mentor, you can post your request, and a mentor will be with you shortly.
Okay, well, if there are no other topics that we wanted to peel back the layers on, we can probably wrap it up, unless there are objections. Okay, cool. Well, that was how to manage tilt, and thank you, Archie, for helping out, and thank you all for coming.